to do many things at the same time. I'll take my minute. Oh, I'm live. Everybody can hear me.
Good afternoon. It is now 4 o'clock. I would like to call to order the Richland County Detention Ad Hoc Committee meeting for April 16th, 2004. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Pugh,
Here.
Walker, English.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for March the 19th, 2024. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll? I'm sorry, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve.
Second. It has been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote?
Pugh,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Motion approved. Item number 3 on the agenda is the adoption of this week's agenda. Mr. Brown, is there any changes or deletions to the agenda?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Move to approve.
All right. Second. It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote?
Pugh,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right. Items for discussion and action. Detention Center update. Mr. Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to give you all another update. As you may recall, at the last committee meeting and then ultimately county council meeting, we did provide an update on our efforts related to the facility itself and our continued efforts in making improvements there. And for this particular week, committee, we want to talk a little bit about the next iteration of addressing potential opportunity for Alvin's Glen Detention Center, and that's with our mental health services. We do have a current provider that does provide us some mental health services, but one of the things that was brought to my attention during a meeting was that for the purposes of continuity of care and having an opportunity to know what's going on with detainees that are in our care while they're being housed there, sometimes they have gone through other agencies and may have a history that we can't really access or readily help them with because we're not connected to the Department of Mental Health. And so what we're going to do today, Chair Pugh, members of the committee, members of council who are present, is we have reached out to the Department of Mental Health. We have the Deputy Director, Ms. Deborah Blaylock here, who is going to talk to us and give us some understanding of some different opportunities that Alvin's Glen Detention Center can utilize to better serve its population of detainees by letting us know what resources are available. And then also locally, the Columbia Area Mental Health Center Director, Ms. Hugg, is also here as well. So the idea behind this is for us to be able to augment the services that we have in order to provide connectivity and continuity of care for detainees that are in our care by allowing the persons with the best available information to help us get those people served so that we're not doing the same things starting from zero when we don't need to start from zero because these people have a history that we're not able to connect with and connect to. So, Mr. Chair Pugh, if you would be so kind, sir, I would ask you to allow me to ask Ms. Deborah Blaylock to approach the podium and just to kind of talk to us a little bit about some of the different services and opportunities. I believe on your dais you have a couple of documents that if she references them, they are different contracts that agencies around the state of South Carolina have in place. So there are different things that we could potentially do. And so we just provided you those as an opportunity to show you what some of the different things that other institutions have in place. And if those things are referenced today, we wanted you to have them available to you. I'm not specifically asking for a particular action item on today, but ultimately an action item would look like, authorizing the administrator to take necessary action to address any medical services that would benefit, augmenting the gap that we have currently at the facility. So with that being said, Mr. Pugh, I would ask if you would be able to recognize Ms. Blaylock so she could come to the podium and give us some feedback.
Absolutely. Before we recognize Ms. Blaylock, we'd like to thank the Honorable Gretchen Barron for joining us this afternoon in the committee. Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Blaylock, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, council members. Good to see y'all. I'd like to thank Mr. Brown and Director Harvey for reaching out to us and having a conversation with us about what we might be able to help you all with. So you do have some copies of sample contracts that some of our mental health centers have and other detention centers around the state. Just to give you a quick overview and tell you where we are embedded in detention centers, we're embedded in Aiken, Barnwell, we're embedded in Berkeley County and Charleston County and York County, Chester County, Orangeburg County, Darlington County, Marion County, Spartanburg County, Kershaw County, and Horry County. So those are the detention centers that have contracts with our mental health centers and those catchment areas. And so they can really be as large and expansive a contract as you want or as small as you want. So obviously, some of the smaller detention centers may contract with us for one single master's prepared clinician who can be embedded in the detention center, serve the individuals in the detention center that are open to the center, or others. So it doesn't have to be just those who are open to the center. We know from some of our larger detention centers that there are other people in the detention center with whom we may have never had contact, but might live with a mental illness. And so we can provide services to those individuals. And I'll use a couple of examples. In the Charleston Detention Center, that's one of our larger contracts. We have, I believe it's 5 master's prepared clinicians and 1 bachelor's prepared clinician embedded in the detention center. And how they function there is when a person is booked in the detention center, the booking staff use the brief, it's the brief jail mental health screen. And that is how they determine if an individual needs to have a referral made to the mental health team to just see them. So that is a very short tool that's used nationally. It's been put out by the Game Center. It is validated and evidence-based. And it's, again, just 10 short questions. And one of them has to do with, have you ever been treated for mental health? Do you take any medications for that? Have you ever felt like dying by suicide? It also has a few substance use questions. And then the booking staff can make a referral to the mental health staff. Those referrals can also come from other people outside of the detention center or for the inmate, him or herself, and just say, I need services. So then our staff will go assess the individual and determine if they need to have ongoing services while in the detention center. In the Charleston contract, the detention center has a medical provider, and the medical provider hires the psychiatrist. The mental health center doesn't. In the Berkeley model, Berkeley hires all the staff to include the psychiatrist. So in the Berkeley model, they have 2 master's prepared clinicians, 1 clinical counselor, which is a bachelor's prepared clinician, 1/3 of a psychiatrist, and 1/2 of an administrative person. In most of our contracts, the mental health center provides assistance on the weekend. So some of our detention centers like to use the mental health center staff to determine if a person needs to be put on suicide watch or taken off of suicide watch. So it really is up to your detention center and your current provider what they think they need from us. It can be the full gamut of things, or it can be limited to one person who, again, addresses people that we already know. But you all can make that decision and choice. Some of the, it's interesting because in some of the models, the detention center pays the mental health center out of its budget. And a couple of the models, not to confuse things for you all, but the delegation in that, delegation to the General Assembly in that community has actually done a member ask for the dollars, and those dollars come from the General Assembly directly to the mental health center to provide that care. Again, I don't want to confuse matters, but that, just to be fully transparent, that is sometimes how these programs are funded. I have some documents for you that you don't have, but I will leave these for you. I just call them one-pager fact sheets. This particular one is from the Helsinki Detention Center in Berkeley County, and it tells how many inmates were served last fiscal year, it's 1,092. The number of staff that they have, how many people are on medications, because detention centers often want to know that, right? Because the medications are a big piece of their budget and they're expensive. What their top diagnoses are and how many people follow up with the mental health center after they leave the detention center. That's a big issue, right? Because for a lot of folks, when they get released, if they don't follow up and take care of their needs, they might end up back with you. And so you all have a lot of good things going on in Richland County. You have a great mental health court. You have a criminal justice coordinating council. You have staff in the detention center now that serve. So anything we can do to augment and make it better, we're happy to support whatever you guys would like.
Thank you, Ms. Blaylock. Is there any questions from my colleagues? Before we get to the questions, I'd like to recognize the Honorable Councilman, Councilman Overture Walker. Thank you, sir. And we also have the Honorable Shakise Newton that's online with us, so we'd like to recognize her as well. And as he walks in, we'd like to recognize the Honorable Jason Brenham for joining us this afternoon. And as he walks in, we'd like to recognize the Honorable Paul Livingston for joining us this afternoon. Thank y'all for joining us. Any questions for Ms. Blaylock, for my colleagues? Ms. English, you're recognized.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Blaylock, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a million questions.
Sure.
Just because my background is in mental health.
Sure.
And I've done it for a long time. And you may not be able to answer these questions, but with those inmates or those people that are charged that already have a diagnosis, and this may be something for our lawmakers and judges to decide, but could there be something along with the court order that we could get the immediate planning stages for those along with their medications? I'm just wondering if any of that is already in place for those that already have mental health cases.
So the detention center should be able to get records from
Okay.
us, and we are obligated by law to share those records with you. Obviously, the ease of having one of our clinicians in is the clinician would have access to the electronic medical record, and our electronic medical record is statewide. So no matter where a person has been served by us, the clinician that would be embedded would have immediate access to that information. So you can get it without our clinician embedded, but it's obviously going to be faster by having somebody embedded. In terms of a judge ordering the records to be sent with a court order, that'll be a question for the judiciary.
That's kind of what I thought. And the last thing is, this could be something along with the conversation that we need to have, is the discharge planning that needs to be in place.
That's a
with
big
that.
deal, right? So as I mentioned, well, I didn't mention it a lot, but I'll mention a lot now. Sometimes folks are released at 11 o'clock at night, midnight, and when they're released, obviously at that time, they're not going to head to a mental health center to get connected to treatment or to a substance use provider to get connected to treatment. And we know a lot of folks in detention may have mental health issues as well as substance use disorders. And actually, more people are going to have substance use disorders than mental health issues. And immediate access to care is crucial for them being successful and not coming through a revolving door, especially for low misdemeanor kind of crimes like trespassing, perhaps urinating in public, those, or public intoxication, those kind of crimes. And what I really like to see is an immediate connection to a center. And so the detention center can make appointments for people immediately, and they do that. The problem is when the person walks out the door, they're not typically going to head down the street to the mental health center, right? So we have to have a really strong way to know who's being released and to be able to reach them quickly. Also, detention centers really have to do a good job of providing medication upon release. Some places that happens really well. Some places it's a 30-day script. Some places it's a 30-day actual medication, the actual pills. Some you guys are using long-acting injectables, which is fabulous because we know from lots of evidence that long-acting injectables keep people better longer, right? Because you don't take a pill every day or multiple times a day. You can't cheek it. You can't spit it out because you're getting a needle in your butt. And so they keep people better longer. And people have a chance to recover from, if they're experiencing psychosis, they have a chance to recover from that and then make better decisions. So we currently reimburse the detention center for its use of LAIs, long-acting injectables, because we got $1 million 3 years ago now, hard to believe, from the General Assembly, and we still have money left because we publicize that we're willing to reimburse any detention center for use of those dollars, but a lot of detention centers haven't taken us up on it. Yours has. So kudos to Alvin S. Glenn and its leadership. Yeah. So that's a big issue too, making sure people have medication upon release. So discharge planning is, in my opinion, critical. But we also know that when people get released, they may be more interested in getting their favorite meal, seeing family, quite frankly, having a drink, using a substance that they couldn't use in detention, and they're not as interested as hopping on down the street to the mental health center. So we have to do a better job of that. We had a grant 2 years ago where we contracted with Loredac and with the mental health center, and they could actually come to the detention center and pick people up. That was grant funded. That's really a helpful model because you immediately get them connected to care, but that grant no longer exists. But we could focus on a way to get that done, but we have to know when a person's being released, you know.
The reason years ago when I was doing this, we had a doctor and a clinician that would go into the jail
Yes.
and make sure that we did that. But if we don't have that here, I would love to have that conversation about what's needed.
Yep. Yeah, we're really grateful for you all to bring us to the table to hear what we have to say.
Ms. Barron, you recognize?
Thank you. So I just had a couple of questions about some information that you presented, just to make sure I'm under. So you said earlier that anyone can, and I'll use this word, make a referral.
Yes.
So in essence, if someone is in our facility, they could, in return, self-identify,
Yes.
say, I have a mental illness, or let's say someone from their family could call in and identify that
Yep.
this person.
Pastors call a lot in Charleston in
Okay.
particular. I just happen to have that information in my head, but absolutely. Yep.
And then my other question that I wasn't clear on, is everyone getting evaluated as a part of the intake process, or is it, again, someone who discloses that information, then they would be evaluated?
So I have to defer to Director Harvey because I don't know what's currently happening.
Yes, Councilwoman. So everyone is getting a screening process. The problem that we're having, which we want Ms. Blaylock and other mental health practitioners to help us out, is to have that to where it's 24 hours, 7 days a week. Weekends we're short, night shift we're short. And so when those high volume of detainees come in, they have to wait until the next business day to get the screening. We want to stop that. We want the screening to start right as soon as they get in so that we can know what's going on with them.
Thank you. Oh, this also Director Harvey. So you just identified some of our specific needs.
Yes, ma'am.
And definitely staffing is one of them. Are there any other mental health related specific needs that you feel like you need in order to fully?
Well, space is going to be another issue. Space, what we're trying to do with the mental health program is going to be very progressive. And when I mean progressive, we're talking about doing groups. We're talking about, really supporting these detainees to where it's going to make it look like a mental health facility. And so staffing and space is going to be two critical areas that we got to overcome.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Walker, you recognize?
Mr. Chair, not sure if this is a question for our presenter, and I'm sorry I didn't get your name.
Debbie
ma'am.
Blaylock.
Ms. Blaylock, pleasure
sir.
to meet you, and
Thank
I
you,
apologize for walking in late during your presentation. But I'm not sure if this is a question for you, Ms. Blaylock, or for Mr. Brown, but I'm looking at the contracts here that are in the packet, and I noticed that the parties to the contract, or contracts rather, is DMH, the respective local mental health center, and then I see also the respective local county. So if Richland County were to go this route, who would be the parties to the contract? Would it be DMH, Columbia Area Mental Health, and Richland County? Who would be the parties to any sort of agreement?
So I can speak to the DMH thing.
Sure,
So-
absolutely, go ahead.
So the Columbia Area Mental Health Center is a part of DMH.
Okay.
So I am the Deputy of Community Mental Health Services for DMH, and my responsibility are the 16 mental health centers that cover all 46 counties of the state, and there's 60 clinics. So Kathy Hugg is an employee of the Department of Mental Health, specifically at the Columbia Area Mental Health Center.
Got it. So who would be the parties to an agreement? I'm just,
So
I'm
it would
curious.
specifically be the Columbia Area Mental Health Center as a representative of DMH, and then Administrator Brown has to speak to the other part of it.
Thank you, Ms. Blaylock.
No, certainly if they, in that agreement, if the county was named, then we would be a party to that as well.
And the reason I'm asking, because again, when I look at all the agreements, the local county is, listed as a party to the agreement. And then my next question, and maybe this is a question for another day, is how do we pay for it? How are they paying for this service in other counties?
So some counties are paying for it out of their budget. They've gone to their county councils and requested dollars. So that's how it is in Charleston County. That's how it is in Aiken and Barnwell. All the counties actually, except for Berkeley. So Berkeley right now is a little bit unique. Berkeley had Representative Celeste Davis, who is a member of the General Assembly out of the Berkeley County delegation, ask for a member ask to pay for the contract that Berkeley has. And I was told Friday that Representative Cobb Hunter has put in a member ask for the Orangeburg Detention Center because she wants to replicate the same model that Berkeley has. So it's a variety of ways at the moment.
And with Columbia Area Mental Health being one of our millage agencies, Mr. Brown, is it possible that they could ask, I guess, for an increase in the millage in the event we were to go this route? Not that I'm suggesting that, but again, I'm just wondering about potential ways to fund the request in the event it were to come before council.
Yeah, so if this request were to come before council, we would not want to tie it to that because in effect, we would just want to be the contractor paying them rather than tying to a millage and then saying because we gave you potentially a millage increase, we would expect for you to enter to this agreement. I don't necessarily know we could tie it to that way, and I would think it would be a little bit cleaner for us just being a contracted third party, similar to the other jurisdictions.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Ms. Blaylock.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions from my colleagues? All right.
Mr. Pugh,
Yes,
if I
sir.
may.
Yes, sir, Mr. Moore.
There was a comment that Director Harvey made, and I want to provide just a little context because he's in it every day. And so sometimes when we talk about these things, he doesn't air out what all that means. So when he talked about space for mental health services, while that is something that, we are aspirational on, that is not something, by design that Richland County government is tasked with doing. We are trying to be better. We are trying to provide optimal access to quality care for our detainees, and that's why we're actually identifying a space where we feel like Department of Mental Health fits right in with our own current third-party provider. But what Mr. Harvey is talking about is this ideal where detention centers become this one-stop shop where men and women who are being detained, they come into your facility, and then you become a medical provider, a mental health provider, and a safe space for these folks to await their ultimate destination. And I just want to say that as we have those aspirations, that, and again, I don't mean this to be anything but factual, we are not a mental health institution. We are not a medical facility. Although we seek to provide the highest quality care service that we can do at Richland County, and we're looking to continue to do that, I don't want us to overlook the conversation about what we aspire to do and what we are required to do being two different things, because in our society right now, there's a conversation about what people should be doing as it relates to detention centers, And I want you to know that the services that we provide, we are providing what we're supposed to provide. We're just trying to do everything that we can to close any gaps. And what Mr. Harvey is talking about is really aspirational in being a type of facility that's able to operate as if we were a mental health facility, as if we were a medical facility, rather than that something being required for a jail or detention center to do. So I appreciate Ms. Blaylock coming and bringing this opportunity for us to better understand how we can connect with the Department of Mental Health. I do think it's something that's important for us to close a potential loop to be better, but I also just want to kind of provide a little context to what my detention center director communicated when he talked about being progressive and having this opportunity to really impact the detainees in a different type of way than maybe they're being impacted today.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Blaylock, thank you for your
Yes, sir.
presentation,
Thank you
ma'am.
for
We
having us.
appreciate that.
We appreciate
I just want to take the opportunity to say this. I am excited about the administration and the leadership at Alvin S. Glenn exploring opportunities for us to help detainees when it comes to mental health. I have a mental health background as well. And unfortunately, Mr. Brown, according to what you just said, we are not a mental health facility, but mental health facilities and mental health help is coming in a whole lot of different aspects. Even with me being a professor on the collegiate level, I have to deal with mental health issues with my students a lot of times. And so, instead of us, it's not a rarity anymore. It's right here in our face. And so it's our jobs as the custodians of the community to make sure that we give the absolute best help and within our purview to help detainees as well as our employees and anybody else that comes in our circle. So I just want to applaud the administration and the leadership for reaching out to DMH to try to get this help for detainees. Anybody else? Do I hear a motion?
I'll be recognized, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely, Mr. Walker, you're recognized.
At this time, I would move to authorize the administrator to look into an agreement with the Department of Mental Health for augmented mental health services for the Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center.
Second.
It's been a motion on the floor and a second. Madam Clerk, any discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote, please, ma'am?
Pugh,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Continue with your presentation.
Yes, sir. The last update I have for the group, Ms. Black, I'm sorry, you don't have to stand at the podium
Thank y'all.
anymore. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last update is really about something that we look to bring to you in anticipation of the next ad hoc meeting, where we're going to talk about our juvenile population, and we want to talk about some potential opportunities we have to address really our operations as Richland County as it relates to that. So you can look at the next ad hoc meeting for us to kind of bring you some details about what that housing looks like for us and what some potential recommendations that we are asking you to consider as it relates to our juvenile population. I'll just kind of give you a brief snapshot going forward. Richland County is one of, I think, 2 counties now. There used to be 3. It was, and I'll ask Director Harvey to correct me if I'm wrong. It used to be Greenville. It is currently still Charleston, which is Al Cannon Detention Center, and it is Richland County, where we actually, house detainees that are juveniles in our facilities. A couple, I think, years ago now in Greenville, because of their staffing issues, went away from housing juveniles and just allowed the state to do what they're charged with, which is to house juveniles, and use their staff to deal with the detention center that they're responsible for. And so currently, we're looking at our situation to determine what may make sense for us to do. So we have some things that we are charged with doing and some things that we're not. And currently, we're doing some things that we're not charged with doing as it relates to housing juveniles. So we want to kind of explore, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, member of council, what that might look like if we allow the state to do what they're charged with and we focus on the folks that we're supposed to detain. So we'll be bringing that back to you in May and taking a look at some of those potential opportunities there. But with that being said, Mr. Chair, I'll take any questions you have, but those are all the updates that we have for the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Livingston, you recognize, sir.
So state statute does not require us to detain juveniles.
I'll let the attorney speak to that, but my understanding is that is correct.
That is correct. It does not. The Department of Juvenile Justice is charged with housing juveniles. The local detention centers, they can if they choose to, but the state is required to. We are not required
Do
to.
we have an agreement with them? Do they pay the money for us to house them?
We do not currently have an agreement with them, but my understanding is just like we provide a per diem, that they would expect a per diem for housing those juveniles that they would house.
Else? That concludes your report, Mr. Brown?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. That concludes my report.
All right. Okay, thank you for that information. Item number 5 on the agenda is adjournment. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Moved.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote?
Would you please confirm who seconded?
I'm sorry. Second? It's been moved and properly seconded.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote?
Pugh,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.